All right, so we're now on to our final list comprehension exercise of the day. And just a word of warning, this exercise is quite hard. I decided that the previous two were a little bit easier and you've now kind of warmed up and you've gotten going. It's time to test your knowledge on a number of things that you've learned. The first thing I want you to do is take a look at these two files and look at the structure of the data in there. And then have a read through the instruction and see if you can complete this challenge. This is the output that you're expecting when your new list called result is printed. Pause the video and give this a go. All right, so we know that we've got two text files with a new piece of data on each line. Essentially, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to take the data in file1.txt and compare it against the data in file2.txt, and then we're trying to get hold of the data which exists in both of these files. So if file 1 contained 1, 2, 3, file 2 contained 2, 3, 4, then the result should be a list that contains the overlapping numbers. 2 and 3 exists in both files. Now, in order to pass the test, the result must be a list that contains integers, so whole numbers, not strings. So when you print it out, if you see the numbers as they are, then that means they are integers. But if you see quotation marks around each of the numbers, then they are strings instead. And our code checking is not going to allow that to pass. The first thing we need to do is to use our read lines method that we've used several times before to read the data from each of these files and create a list from each line. Let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to use my with open and I'm going to tap into my file1.txt and I'm going to save this as file1. And then this file is going to be read. And I'm going to call file1.readLines, and then I'm going to save this list to a new variable called file1data. And notice how I've actually made a typo here because I want file1.txt instead of just file.txt. It's good that I spotted it. And then we're going to do the same with file2 and change all the places where we have 1. So copy and pasting is always a little bit prone to error, but hopefully we'll manage this time. Now that I've got file1 data and file2 data, which are both lists, I can now think about how I can compare those two and create my new list, which is going to be called result. Now, result is a new list, and I'm going to use my full list of keywords inside this new list to create the list comprehension. So new item for item in list if test. The list that I'm going to test is actually this first list. I'm going to take the file1 data, which is a list of numbers, and then I'm going to go through each of the numbers inside this list, and then I'm going to do a check. And the check is where this file2 is going to come into play. So I'm going to check to see, well, if this number that I'm looping through exists in, remember the in keyword, this file2 data, this other list, well, then I'm going to include this number inside my new list. So this number is going to go into the new list. At the moment, when I hit run, you can see I'm getting a whole bunch of strings. So in addition, I have to modify this number so that I convert it into an integer. So I end up with the same output as is expected here. Did you remember all of the things that we've learned before, like the in and the with open and also the converting to int? Did you manage to complete this challenge? If you had any trouble at all, be sure to review the relevant parts, for example, opening files or reading lines from the files, which we covered in previous days. Alternatively, if it's the list comprehension that's hard, then be sure to review the list comprehension lesson in today's course and make sure that you really understand what's going on in the code before you continue.